Well, welcome to D.
Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you here. So you're pretty synonymous with the term e-commerce. How many people here have like a pile of Amazon boxes in their house? Yeah, I know.
Bless
I do.
you.
I know I do. But you're moving beyond your traditional arena. Obviously, you started off selling books. You sell. How many products do you sell? Is there some number? Is it countable?
It's millions and millions. Actually, millions and millions in stock under our own roof. If you count third-party products, out-of-print things, used products of different kinds, it's tens of millions.
And now you're doing intangible things, digital downloads.
Yes.
And hardware with the Kindle.
Right.
I mean, you've sold hardware forever, but this is your hardware.
That's right.
So why not just stay in your powerful niche of being the go-to place that most people think of as where I buy stuff online? Why not just stay in that comfortable space?
Well, it is a good question, and we do have a high bar when we undertake one of these things that's, not right in the center of what we already know how to do. I think, most of the extensions we've done to our business over time, we've questioned ourselves, and outsiders have questioned them, even, going international, which we did many years ago, which is a big part of our business now. Entering into new product categories. People thought music and DVDs made sense, but we started selling electronics and toys and apparel and shoes. I'm amazed how many shoes we sell today, Walt. I really can't believe it.
How many?
It's so many that we've started a focused website to just do that space.
Wow.
So people sort of understand those product extensions at this point. But new hardware, I think people look at that and they say, what are these guys thinking? And really, how we get there is by basing our strategy first and foremost on customer needs instead of what our skills are. So it's important to take an inventory of your skills, know what you're good at, and then try to do things that match up with your skills. But if you only do that, in our view, then eventually you will be outmoded because your customers will eventually need things that you don't have skills for. So you need to renew yourself by developing new skills. And when we looked at electronic books, we'd been selling electronic books for a long time, and you needed a microscope to find the sales. And so when we looked at this and we looked at the existing technologies that were out there, we thought, what customers need, and that need-based way of forming strategy, is a device that made it very, very frictionless to buy and read electronic books. And so we wanted to build a very seamless, vertically integrated experience. And that required us to develop this whole new skill set, which probably take us 10 years to develop. But if you're going to develop it, you might as well get started.
Well, I want to bore in on Kindle as part of this interview, but why don't we talk about the skill set you're talking about? It may take you 10 years to develop it. Obviously, we're in an age where if you want to do a hardware device, you don't have to have a factory.
Right.
There's all these folks particularly in China who are ready to build almost any device. I assume that's where it's built, somewhere over there. The most hailed laptops and cell phones and everything are not built in factories owned by their manufacturers. So
that's right. It's not the manufacturing.
That's just an economic. Those
Yes.
guys are fabricating.
That's right.
Although actually there are two models, at least with laptops and cell phones, particularly laptops, where they actually develop some designs, and there are some companies who pretty much just slap their name on it and paint it a different color. And
right.
And there are other companies that go over and say, here's a complete engineering package and design package, and what we want you to do is fabricate it. So that's not, the manufacturing part I understand, but what kinds of people did you have to hire, or skill set that you have to?
The design package, the supply chain. We've over the last 5 or 6 months, we've really had to beef up our supply chain and figure out how how to manage that better. It's very different from the kind of supply chain we're accustomed to managing. Now, when we do this, of course, we don't learn it from scratch as complete toddlers. We go out and hire very experienced people who've done it before, but they still have to come together as a team. And the other thing is, we do bring some unique skills to the table when doing something like Kindle. This is a big, sort of vertically integrated stack of services and business relationships and so on. To do this at the, one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that the books were at an attractive price point for electronic books. And so we, had to work with the publishers to get that to happen. We had to figure out a user experience, which is a skill set and a competency of ours, that would be attractive on the device. And that included, reinventing the wireless business model, which has been a big part of the success of the device, in my opinion.
I actually think the most brilliant thing about the first generation Kindle, as you know, I had some reservations about certain of the design features of the hardware itself, but I think the seamlessness with which you could buy books, the building in of cell phone wireless into it, you call it WhisperNet, the fact that you're not charged extra for that, and you can just, on a whim, somebody says, hey, here's this, you really ought to read this book, I can go right there, order it, download it, is brilliant. And the catalog of books that you have, which is a lot bigger than anyone else's. The screen also is quite good. How many have you sold?
Well, we're not disclosing that.
But can you give me an order of magnitude?
Well, I can give you a new stat that we've not shared before, so perhaps that fits into your theme of news.
Yes.
Which
new things not shared before, yeah.
Which is that, and I do find this a pretty startling statistic, but more than, if you look on a title-by-title basis, so we have 125,000 book titles available for Kindle. So if you look at that subset of titles, and look at Amazon's physical book sales of those same titles, the Kindle sales are now the Kindle unit sales are now more than 6% of those total sales.
Really? Of that universe of 125,000
Of that universe
titles.
of 125,000 titles. Which, and by the way, many of those are best-selling titles. That, it's 100 of the New York Times bestsellers are included in that group.
What happened with the supply chain, I guess, or the supply of Kindles? You had this big publicity burst. Everybody wrote about it. You were the cover of Newsweek. You had reviews, and then very quickly you sold out.
Yes.
Did you sell out because you were very conservative about how many you built at first?
Well, in retrospect, we were very conservative. We didn't know at the time we were being so conservative. And it is our goal in general is to be in stock, to offer low prices, and we're taking that same philosophy with Kindle. This week we lowered the price from $3.99 to $3.59, and part of that is because we have the manufacturing, we've been able to improve the supply chain and the manufacturing, and we're able to lower the price.
It's not that you're clearing out this model for a new model that will come very soon?
No. We're selling, the Kindle is selling well. We're extremely happy about it.
Okay. Yeah, but this is not the last model of Kindle, right?
No, there'll be a second version and a third version and a 10th version and so on.
Okay, but I'm only asking about the price cut because sometimes when the second version is getting near, people cut the price on...
Second version is not that near.
Not that near. Okay, good. Let's talk about electronic books in general. I think that I have actually walked around with and tried and reviewed pretty much every one that's come out in the last 15, 16 years. The Kindle is by far the best one, partly because it has that wonderful connected nature. There was one once which actually had the same idea, but it was in the dial-up days, and it was just a clumsy thing. Here I could be anywhere and connect, and you've done a really good job with that whole back-end service. And there have been comparisons to the iPod, the hardware, the software, the service, and you've done that. and you've done it brilliantly. But what about the whole idea of people reading on a screen,
Yeah.
and with navigation controls and that sort of thing? Are you convinced that just as other kinds of media like newspapers and things are heavily challenged, and people see a line of growth for digital and decline for physical, is that going to happen in books, do you think?
Well, I know over some time horizon, for sure, books will be read on electronic devices. The vast majority will. I mean, physical books won't completely go away, just as horses haven't completely gone away. So they'll be around, but there is no sinecure for any technology, and if you think about books, it's astonishing. It's very hard to find a technology that has remained in mostly the same form for 500 years. And anything that has stubbornly resisted improvement for 500 years is going to be hard to improve. So that is what we're trying to do with Kindle. We see this as an effort to improve upon the book, even though it's resisted change for 500 years. And you have to do that, you have to capture the essential element of a book, which I think Kindle does very well, which is that it disappears when you get into the flow of the story. So none of us, when we're reading a book, think about the ink and the glue and the stitching, and all that fades away, and you get into the author's universe.
Unless the leather cover keeps falling off while you're
Right, and actually sometimes big, heavy hardcover books do break you out of the flow because you get hand fatigue. So there are little things that happen, or turning pages can be loud if you have a spouse sleeping next to you. And there are things about physical books that we're accustomed to, but that actually aren't very good. And likewise, you need to capture that essential feature, and that was our #1 design objective with Kindle, was to capture that disappearing nature of a book, which means a lot of very tactical things, right? It has to be light. Kindle weighs 10.3 ounces. It can't get hot or warm in your hands. If you read in bed on a laptop, you start sweating. There are some of these things that sound small. It can't beep and make noises at you. I once had a microwave oven that, when it was finished cooking whatever it cooked, beeped at me once every 30 seconds until I opened the door.
Yeah.
I call those self-important devices. And they're extremely annoying.
I have a clothes dryer like that.
Yes, it's like, I'll
I'm
get the
really
clothes when
not
I'm
that
darn well
interested.
ready.
Right.
Right. Don't tell me I need to get the clothes.
Yeah.
And so,
The Bezos manifesto against
I
clothes
get
dryers.
very hostile with my devices.
Yeah.
So you need to do a lot of very tactical things to get the device to disappear, and there are a lot of potholes, and I think we did a very good job of that. But you also can't ever outbook the book. So you need to look for a series of things that you can do with an electronic device like Kindle that you could never do with a physical book. And some of them can be pretty simple, like dictionary lookup. You can do in-stream dictionary lookup. I find I don't know what a lot of words mean, and I used to guess. And it's because, what am I really going to get up off of the sofa or wherever I'm reading and go find a dictionary?
I never told you this, but I noticed that when we first met a long time ago. Yeah.
And so, and then there are some changing the font size, a very simple thing, but that's much appreciated. And then some whoppers. The big whopper is wireless delivery of books in less than 60 seconds. The fact that you can...
Look, to me, that's the key to it. You should have made the leather cover hook on the thing a little better. There was too much chance to accidentally hit the page turn button.
The inadvertent button presses.
I'm confident you guys will deal with that.
We've heard this feedback loud and clear.
That's the nature of iteration and technology. But the brilliant stroke was the seamless tie to the back-end service.
And I would say that capability bundled with, we really wanted the low complexity so that you don't have the cognitive overhead of thinking about your monthly wireless bill. There'd be different ways to do this, and we're hiding all of the... You don't have to know who the wireless carrier is.
Right.
We're hiding all of that complexity.
Except it's Sprint.
It is Sprint,
Yeah.
and our WhisperNet software layer is built on top of the Sprint network. They're doing a great job for us.
Was it built in a modular enough way that if you decided to go to some other wireless carrier or technology, you could do that as well?
Well, it has to be, because we're going to, globally,
Yeah.
we need to be thinking globally about the device, and we are.
One thing that people like to do on their books, I mean, I guess it could vary, but a lot of people like to do it, is to annotate them, to take notes sometimes.
Yes.
And all of the old electronic books had some way, not all, but many of them had some way to do that. They considered that pretty core.
Yeah.
You do have a keyboard on there. Some of these guys tried, some kind of handwriting and so forth. You didn't have that in the first Kindle. Are you gonna have that?
I don't, with a stylus or some sort of touch or something like that.
You tell me.
Maybe. There are some issues with doing that on an electronic ink display. One of the nice things about the Kindle is the ink is very close to the surface, and anything you put on top of that surface degrades that experience.
Like a digitizer.
Yeah. So those are not impossible things, and we'll keep abreast of those technologies and try to make the right balance for customers. The annotations, the innovation that we have made with annotations is that your margin notes and underlinings and so on are stored on the server side, where A, they can't be lost, and B, where you can search them and find your old notes. I'm a margin note taker in books, but I almost never, if truth be told, ever go back and look at my notes. And part of it is finding them is not easy when they're buried in a book.
What do you say, when I did my Kindle column, I got quite a lot of email from people whose ages I couldn't tell, but who were talking about the tactile feel of a book.
Yeah.
And the sort of hard to describe intangibles around reading a paper book that you lose on an electronic device.
First of all, I'm sure people love their horses too.
Yeah. I love mine.
Right. I mean, but you're not going to keep riding your horse to work just because you love your horse. So it's our job to build something that is better than a physical book. That people say, look, I love physical books. And the reason we love physical books, and I do too, is because we have had so many great experiences with that object in our hands that we have nice associations with it. I was curious, what is the smell of a book? Because I like that smell. And so I did some research, and it is primarily the glue, a little bit of the ink, and a little bit of mildew. So that's the smell that we like. And do we really like that smell intrinsically? I don't think so. I think what happens is, starting when you're 1 year old and your parents are reading to you, you start developing very fond associations between those smells and that device. We can never capture that.
Sure, you could put some glue and mildew on the thing, right?
And so that is...
I'm sure there are vendors who would sell you something to put aroma in there.
Well, I'm sure you could. I don't know. We'll take that under advisement.
Yeah.
But it just sort of... I think what you have to do is say, look, we're not trying to displace people's love of that physical object that is the book. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's a kind of a hallowed invention, and it should be. It's been around for long form. But the thing to keep in mind is what's really important is not the container, but it's the narrative. It's the long form reading is important for our society. And over the last 20 years, most of the tools that we humans have invented have really made it easier for us to be information snackers. And we do more of what's easy. We co-evolve with our tools. If we invent information snacking tools, they change us. And then we invent more tools. So there's this kind of cycle. And if we can, if one of the outcomes of Kindle and other generations of Kindle and other devices like it from other companies ends up making long-form reading more frictionless so that you end up doing more of it, I think that's a good thing.
So, I think, I could be wrong, but I think this is your first hardware device since you started Amazon,
yes.
right? So one of the things that everyone who does, like Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates last night, or you know, Michael Dell, who'll speak later, they all know about this, is this feature creep problem. And you know about it too, really, in the way you built your service. There are moments when you have to say, no, we're not going to do this.
Yes.
This is how we define this product. And we're not going to, even just because it has a screen and it has a wireless connection.
Just because it can do
it could
things.
be 11 more things, but we're not going to, you know, do it.
Right.
And yet, you know, you do have that kind of experimental section on there. You have kind of a not very good web browser in the first one, but it is a web browser. You have blogs and stuff like that. What do you do about that issue? Do you have a big strategic choice to make of, is this your pocket sort of reading and surfing thing, which could become sort of a complete a web browser? Or are you very concerned to keep focusing on what you just described, long-form reading electronically that disappears and all of that?
I think the analogy I use is like digital cameras. I like having a digital camera on my cell phone, but I still own a digital camera that's purpose-built for taking pictures. And what we're working on with Kindle is purpose-built for reading. You know, if there are things that would fit in that form factor that people really want, and if they make sense and they don't detract from the core purpose of the device, we can try to add those things. Like you can add a camera to a cell phone, but you would never do that if it interfered with your ability to talk on the cell phone. That would be a really, you have to understand what the core purpose of the device is, and then you have to know what your device is. And our device is not a cell phone. You know, it's not a bunch of things, and we think there is a market. I don't know how.
Is it a web browsing device?
It should be able to browse the web with electronic ink. Electronic ink. If you're trying to build a perfect web browsing device, you would not use electronic ink.
Because it doesn't refresh fast enough.
Because it doesn't refresh fast enough.
Doesn't support flash. There's a lot of things it doesn't do.
Perfect, beautiful, you know, unsurpassed for reading.
For reading monochrome or grayscale things.
I'm talking about like reading a book.
You know, I know, but I mean, some books have color, and you don't really have color there.
Good point. But it's not the right technology. It's not the right display technology for a high-quality web browser. But you really want to have video rates.
Or Philips or whoever it is that you're getting this screen from, we had E-Ink here at the very first D talking about this, and you know, your competitor at Sony is using a similar screen, maybe the same screen for all I know, sort of the same technology at least. If they suddenly got over these hurdles where it could be a good web browser, would you think, to go back to my feature creep question rather than the technology limitation?
That one I would say is way above the bar. In other words, if we could do it, by the way, it's highly speculative because E-Ink is nowhere near having video rates. So, you know, we're kind of living in a constructed universe here. But that, in that constructed universe, I would say, yeah, you'd love to have a great web browser. A web browser is a really useful companion for reading, and it's a really useful tool. You know, the web is in some sense, you know, you might say the web is the most important book in the world. If you could only, you know, have one book, and if you considered the web a book, you'd probably take it over any other book.
Plus, you could go to the Amazon.com website on
of course.
Order shoes, right?
Absolutely. In multiple colors.
Like Kindle Shoe Edition.
Kindle Shoe Edition.
You could have. We need to talk about some other things you're doing, but let me just, to close out on Kindle, can you imagine a day when Kindle is a really significant part of your overall business, overall revenues?
Yes, I can. I think it could be a meaningful financial component in the company. A lot of things have to go right. We have to execute well. You know, we have a big retail business and a big, you know, third-party sales business. And so when we look at opportunities and things that we can do like Kindle, when we look at those from a business point of view, we want to make sure that if we're going to put energy into them, that if they work, they have the possibility of being meaningful for the overall business.
And what's meaningful to you?
Well, we did $14 billion in sales last year. And so, you can pick what fraction of that over time has to be, I don't know.
I could pick 7 billion, but I mean, you probably mean something lower. I mean, what's meaningful?
I think, I don't want to give you a particular figure, but I do think that, it has to be.
Well, could it get to 10% of your overall revenues?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. And, what we do is we try to build the best businesses we can, and, our third-party sales business is like that. We have a customer-centric vision, and then we ask ourselves, and we want to be motivated first and foremost by that. So I call it missionaries. We want to be missionaries about the product, because missionaries build better products. So when we're making our product decisions and having our offsite meetings about Kindle and so on, we don't talk about market sizes and all those things. We do have a separate process where we said, look, this is going to be a big investment. Is it worth it to make this investment? I was asked by our CFO during a meeting, this is going back 2 years ago, we're still in the middle of developing Kindle, and he said to me, Jeff, how much money are you willing to spend investing on Kindle? And I said, how much do we have? And so, because you have to get in that mindset of, we're going to do this, let's do it right. It's important. Customers, if we can get it right, we believe, I think now is the right time. Enough technologies like electronic ink, like widespread 3G wireless, are converging and coming together, that something like Kindle has a place in the world now. And we're well positioned to do it because of our relationships with publishers, which is we haven't talked much about that whole piece, and the server-side software that stands behind Kindle, kind of in the cloud, and makes Kindle, be able to download books and newspapers and magazines and blogs and make all that invisible. That server side is a very significant component as well. So there are a lot of pieces that had to be pulled together. And we're one of the few companies that could really do that.
Let's talk about a couple of those kinds of things for a minute. You're also moving heavily, even putting the Kindle aside, into selling downloads of music and video onto computers and onto TiVos even,
yes,
which gets it onto the television. How serious are you about that business?
Very serious. It's a much more difficult business in some ways because there are so many market participants. So it has that kind of video and music have that glamour element, which is always unfortunate, because it attracts people. But what we're working on, and I know you've seen it, we've showed it to you, is a new version of video on demand at Amazon, which is going to be a 4-pay streaming service, which we'll release in the next several weeks. So there's another piece
bit of news here. 4-pay streaming.
Yeah.
But that's in addition to your downloading that you already have,
yes,
right?
Yes. And the streaming service will start instantly, and it's a la carte 4-pay.
And why do you think that is the right way to go, or the better way?
I don't know if it's the right way to go, but it's usually in these markets, it's not winner take all. Most markets are not winner take all. There are a few. But usually, there are a bunch of different customers out there. They have different needs. If the market sizes are big enough, a few different models can be supported. And I think the video market is like that. So, is there going to be an ad-supported video? Yes. Is there a commercial-free environment for people who want to pay a little bit of money to not have to watch any commercials? I think so. I think there are a subset of people out there that value their time very highly and don't want to be interrupted, and if they want to, they could skip having a latte that day and watch a show commercial free.
So iTunes has some, I can't remember what the number is, but it's a very high share of music and also a decent share of video. Do you see that as a temporary thing, where as other people get in and do it better or than they have before, that the market becomes much more distributed among the players, and they don't sort of have this gigantic share?
Well, I don't. First of all, I think it's very hard to know the answer to that question. I mean, you know, they have executed so well and created such a good experience. That's the, you know, that's the key issue for people who would compete against them. You know, what we're doing is very different. You know, we don't have a hardware device. We have DRM-free MP3s, 5.2 million tracks now, all the majors, something, you know, approaching 40,000 different independents plus the majors. So we have great selection of MP3s. It integrates with iTunes, so you can download the songs. It's not, you know, and you can play them on your iPod.
You can download them, just so I understand what you mean, and maybe not everybody's familiar with it. You have a little piece of software, and as you download, if iTunes is what you're using on your computer, they just go right into the iTunes library as if you downloaded them from iTunes on store.
Exactly. And so it's, you know, it's a very simple kind of solution, and you know, they're DRM free, and the prices are attractive. So you know, many of the tracks we sell are, I think, I can't remember the number, but a couple million of the tracks, including the best sellers,
so are you
like 89
benefiting
cents.
from the fact that the content companies, at least some of them, are not always very happy with Steve Jobs? I mean, are they seeing you as the main alternative? I mean, they're doing deals with a lot of people.
I would frame it slightly differently. I would say that it is clearly in their self-interest, their enlightened self-interest, they're right about this, to have a vibrant, you know, multitude of companies distributing their music. I think, you know, they would love to see that happen. I think it's smart of them to want to see that happen.
But you've somehow, I think it's fair to say that you've positioned yourself at the moment as the principal kind of go-to alternative.
Well, I think they're very happy.
I mean, I think your share is still well below theirs.
Oh yeah, way below. But it's growing.
In this kind of.
I think the music IP owners are, you know, they're watching our growth rates very carefully, and I think they're very happy.
And do you think the same will be true of the video IP owners, the TV shows and movies and so forth, as you broaden this out?
Yeah, I hope so. And I think if I were a video IP owner or a content owner, I would want to make sure that my content is distributable in as many sensible ways as possible. If somebody wants to do it as a for-pay, a la carte streaming service, I'd work out reasonable commercial terms and I'd let them do it. I think if you're a content owner, generally speaking, it doesn't make sense to, you know, you want to get your content out to as many people as possible. And there are going to be a lot of different customers who want to consume this content in a lot of different ways. You know, that's why they make chocolate and vanilla.
So iTunes is going down, is that right?
No, that's not what I said.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard that. The other really interesting thing to me that you're doing, I think a lot of people don't quite get it because it's not very consumery, at least not yet, is this S3 thing.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? I mean, you've become a company that's providing like storage in the cloud, right?
That's right. Not just storage, but compute and queuing services and artificial intelligence with Mechanical Turk and you know, a web service that actually provides fulfillment, lets you treat all of our warehouses as like a big giant computer peripheral. So if you look at the web services you're talking about, S3, the simple storage service, EC2, the Elastic Compute Cloud, the simple queuing service, the simple DB, these are what we call our infrastructure web services. And they allow you to build applications in the cloud without owning any hardware of your own. And just by writing software, you don't have a data center. We live in a weird multi-decade era right now, and have lived in it for the last few decades, where people build their own data centers. And I was recently in Luxembourg, and I went on a tour of a brewery, and it's a 300-year-old brewery, and they showed me their museum. And in the museum, they have a 100-year-old electric power generator. And 100 years ago, they had to generate their own electric power. But that didn't make their beer taste any better.
Right.
And then, of course, they got rid of the electric power generator as soon as they could
hook up to the grid.
Yeah. And the computer grid, the kind of compute grid, the utility computing, people use different names for this right now, is a good idea. And it is going to happen. It makes a lot of sense for many applications for you not to. And one of the big things is it can be so scalable. The reason we call it elastic compute cloud is because you can scale up and, very importantly, scale down. We have one client, we actually just made a small investment in them, a company called Animoto, and uses all of our web services. And they they were going along using about 25 EC2 servers, elastic compute cloud servers, and they built a YouTube app that was viral and caught on. And in 3 days, they went from 25 EC2 instances to 5,000 EC2 instances. You could never have handled that. That happened in 3 days. And then it tailed off a little bit, and they came back down to some smaller number of thousands of servers. So, and they could give back that capacity. But if you're a startup company, there's just no way you could say, well, let's prepare for the chance that we have a huge viral hit. Let's buy 5,000 servers and put them in a data center. It's illogical.
So is this, again, like Kindle, is this I mean, we think of you so much as being an online store, and you've done it so well. But I mean, is this...
Why are we doing this?
Yeah, well, not why, but is this...
It has
will I think of Amazon in 5 years as being the guys that do elastic computing in the cloud more than I think of you as the place to go?
If you're a software engineer, you
buy
might.
my next
If you're a software engineer, you may.
Odds of that are very low.
Well, the consumer brand is going to be the thing. Like how people think of the company is undoubtedly going to continue to be the average person, the broad mainstream person is going to think of Amazon as a place to go buy digital cameras and shoes and et cetera, et cetera. So that is but I think it could be a meaningful business for us over time, and it could be and if you're a software engineer, it could be the primary way you think of Amazon. Just like today, if you're a seller, our third-party sales business is the primary way you think of Amazon.
Even if they buy some shoes there.
Yeah, and we did kind of back into this business. We started working on this 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. What we found just internally at Amazon, we had this Amazon is a big web application.
Yeah.
And what we found is that the interface between our network engineering group and our applications programming teams was very complicated. There was way too much fine-grained coordination required between I need you to deploy 30 servers for me with this configuration, and so on and so on. And then, each of these application teams had to develop a kind of a forecast for how many more servers they would need on a quarterly basis. And it was just getting complicated. And so we set out just for ourselves to design a hardened API between that network engineering layer and the applications teams that the applications teams could count on, and that the network engineering teams could count on, so that the coordination between them could be coarse-grained instead of fine-grained. Just simplify that whole thing. And as we started, architecting that and thinking about it, it became obvious to us that everybody would need this. And that was 4 years ago. And so we said, look, with a little extra effort, we can, externalize this and turn it into a new business that, if it works, could be very meaningful.
I have one last quick question, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. The economy. You're a big seller of things to consumers, and obviously, I mean, just in the last couple of days, gas prices are up like another 15 cents a gallon. The resale prices of homes plunged again the other day. Are you seeing the effect of this economic slowdown, and do you worry about it?
Well, as you can see from the last quarter results that we just put out, we haven't seen that. I mean, you can never know for sure, because I don't know what our growth rates would have been in a stronger economy. But our business is doing well. There are some things working to our advantage in this kind of economy. We have been obsessively focused for, a decade on being efficient and being able to offer low prices, which helps in this kind of environment. When gasoline is expensive, driving to the store is expensive. You take a 2,000-pound car to pick up 5 pounds of stuff. It's the least efficient transportation network in the world. So that is we do have there are some positive factors in our business in that regard.
But if I buy a 5-pound thing from you, some guy in a 4,000-pound truck is going to deliver it to my house. I mean,
but he goes
it's not like nobody drives.
But he goes on a route, and that route is very efficient. It's a totally different thing. It's half of our deliveries are done by the U.S. Postal Service, and that half, literally,
I don't like that half.
The truck drives around.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway. Well, they're driving around anyway, and they stop at almost every house. It's super efficient relative to driving yourself, where it's this like point-to-point network.
So the short answer is, while you don't know where you might have been if the economy was stronger, you have not seen a hit from it. From the slowdown. Well, thanks. Of
course.
Questions?
Hey, Jeff, I wanted to ask you about DRM in Kindle. I was a Sony reader owner with a large collection of Sony reader, and I got rid of it, bought my Kindle, and all my books disappeared, including the ones I hadn't read. And it seemed very odd to me that here's Amazon doing MP3s and leading the effort to DRM-free media, but the Kindle is a new bastion of DRM for digital media, and I was wondering how you think about that.
Well, not everything on Kindle has DRM, first of all. We do have a digital text platform, which is our self-service way for publishers to submit content. The default on that is DRM-free. They can change it, but the default is DRM-free. So we set up a system with Kindle where it's agnostic to DRM. Publishers get to choose. You can't lose things on the Kindle because we store a copy of everything you purchase in the cloud. And if you drop your Kindle in the bathtub or something or lose it at the beach, you can get everything re-downloaded from Amazon. The other nice thing about that is you can, without thinking, without any cognitive overhead, you can delete anything off of your Kindle and not worry, oh, have I backed this up? Am I gonna, all that is a pain. So we have the rights with the publishers to store a copy for you in the cloud and re-download that to your device anytime you need it. So that solves that particular point problem. With music, we had to work with the IP owners, and we did it in a very cooperative way. But it took 3 years of working with them to get to that DRM-free solution.
But if Howard Stringer
My own view is that DRM would not slow down sales.
But if Howard Stringer came up in an hour
DRM-free would not slow down sales.
But if he shows us the next generation of Sony reader, and all of us go, oh, we want to go buy that, once again, we'll lose all of our investment in our media.
Well, not on the DRM-free titles.
But on the books.
But we can talk to publishers, but at the end of the day, it is their decision about how they want to do that.
Okay. Stuart?
Hey, Jeff, I love my Kindle. I've stopped buying the other kind of book completely. But I'm a little pissed off at you, and I just wanted to poke you on this. Every time I go to Amazon, so one of the coolest things, Walt didn't ask you about this, one of the coolest things about Kindle is when it arrives, it knows who you are.
Right.
And it knows what you're buying. But when I go to Amazon now, it keeps promoting the Kindle to me, and I already own one, and you guys know that.
But you've only bought one.
Okay, fair.
No, the serious answer.
Could I have a preference setting that turns off, because you're taking off about half the screen space on my Amazon starting page.
It's not efficient use
So let me broaden the question a little bit.
But the answer to that sub-question is it's not efficient use of the screen space, and we're trying to get more efficient in how we use it.
Excellent. I'd like to see that happen soon. But you guys are famous for figuring out what people want in advance, that you did this. You're a technology company, and this is one of your technologies that you're working on. So how good are you at that particular technology, and how much better can we expect you to get?
Which technology?
Understanding my
recommendation.
preferences.
The recommendation.
Understanding my preferences and what I'm likely to want.
Yeah.
Recommending
Well, if you
things.
look at personal recommendations, we've been working on it, I guess, for 12 years. And I think we are as good as anybody. And, it's hard to tell, but maybe better than anybody. We still make lots of dumb recommendations. And so the way to think about this is that you're trying to increase serendipity, even by a little. And if you can do that, you're winning for customers. So let's say that without any fancy algorithms, if you just did, take your best sellers and promote those. If you could give people, that would be a very naive algorithm, but it would probably, let's say it would give, I make up the numbers, say it would give somebody, 1 time in 100, they would come to the website and they'd be like, oh, wow, that's really cool and it's really for me and I'm really glad. What you're trying to do with personal recs is take that 1% chance that you'll have a good serendipity outcome and change it to 2%, and then change it to 3%. But keep in mind, even if you get 3 times as good as the naive algorithm and go from 1% to 3%, you're still wrong 97% of the time. So that's where we are with the state of the, again, I'm making up the numbers. I don't want to give out the real numbers.
You weren't saying you're 3% of the way towards 100%, towards perfection.
Yeah, no, the numbers are
I'd love that if you were that
illustrative
good.
only.
Over here.
Hi, Charlie Brenner from Fidelity Investments. Netflix has just partnered with Roku to come out with a streaming box, a very simple device attaches to the TV and works under their business model of all you can eat for a fixed monthly fee. You made a very cogent argument for a purpose-built box for reading books, and presumably that same logic might apply to streaming movies. So what is your view about whether in fact we should have separate boxes for movies, or whether we should try to integrate them into TiVos as you've done, or into computers going forward?
I think that my own guess is that separate boxes are an intermediate step, and that streaming capabilities will be built directly into television sets.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Walt.